You're listening to In Sickness, a caregiving podcast from the Negative Space with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima. Good morning, Allison.
Hi, Justin. This morning we have with us Priscilla Momah. Listeners who attended CaregiverCon in Minneapolis last fall will remember that it was Priscilla who started off the conference by leading this room full of caregivers in this beautiful mindful meditation. She closed out our conference with sound bowls, and both of those were just like this healing, beautiful, restorative moments for me, I can say, in that day, and I know for many others. She's also the one who wrote and performed the original song, I'm Part of the Story, for the storyline, which just launched. So I'm so excited that you're here with us, Priscilla. Welcome.
Greetings. Excited to be here too.
Good, thanks.
Good. Priscilla, Allison mentioned meditation and sound bowls and writing and performing music, but I think those are just a few of the many things that you do.
Yes.
Can you start off by sharing what it is that you do as well as how you got into this field?
Yeah. I dabble in a lot of things, but they kind of all work together to create basically spaces to cultivate care. And so I'm a musician by heart, and that's kind of what informs a lot of the work that I do. I curate a lot of songs and healing soundscapes that really empower the heart space to shine, to be real, to offer grace to oneself. And so with that being said, I really, during the pandemic and kind of the whirlwind of change and transition, it really invited the reimagination of like how I can show up in the world. And so I moved back to Minnesota and kind of started all over and really prioritized my healing. And so I started to really integrate that into my work. So I became a yoga instructor, and I facilitated a lot of mindfulness experiences, what I call soulful embodiment experiences that would then fuse live music and the mindfulness practice together. And so that's kind of really where I land now. I curate like soulful embodiment experiences that fuse live music, movement, breath work, yoga, some somatic movement, and what I call somatic serenades, which include vocal alchemy and sound bath experiences, which include using different tools and instruments like crystal bowls, chimes, gongs, and percussion undertones that really do its own work. I get to play these instruments and like really curate these soundscapes, but the vibration of the music and the sounds really do its own magic to bring about rest and restoration into the body. And so that's I think I kind of gave a good drop into, what I do.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you said, because I think, people are likely familiar with terms like meditation and yoga, but there's a couple terms you threw out there that I would love for you to dig into a little deeper. So you said, I think vocal alchemy, is that one that you said? And then also, if you can just also tell us a little bit, like paint a picture after you defined vocal alchemy about like what a sound bath, like what does that look like? What does that entail for folks? Can you explain those?
Yes. Vocal alchemy, it's using the voice to really curate a space for internal transformation. So a lot of the work that I do is empowering. So I do a lot of one-on-one and small group kind of experiences. And through that experience, whether it's tailored towards, restful resilience or cultivating care or whatever the theme is, we co-create and collaborate on creating and defining these terms. And through the voices of everyone, I kind of create this sort of, how do you even describe it? It's called like, I use the voices of everyone else to create a song from the words that they say, and it's brought back to them. So it's really an integrative song that's built and curated by community. And so it's really, really fun and powerful to not only receive the, your own wisdoms, because it's a wisdom share that's happening, but it really lands in the body. And so creating these healing soundscapes really informs the sound bath as well, because it's kind of the same science behind what's happening. And so I utilize in a typical sound bath, you kind of come in There's really no wrong way to experience a sound bath. However, I do really guide people to find a comfortable position that they can land in. However, if you have agency, if you want to move around, find gentle movement. If you want to be seated up, lying down, invite as much supportive props as you'd like. That's really the way that I like to curate the space. And then I start the space, inviting people to drop in a grounding practice, whether that be through the breath, whether that be through some sort of like mind body, heart connection. And then I start to use the resonation of the sound bowls. So we strike the bowls, whether through with a mallet, whether through different like kind of percussionist patterns, or through these smooth, really beautiful strikes that create this resonation through the bowls that impact the space. So the sound, hits against the body, the building, the space, and creates these sort of like really cool transcendental like sound impacts on the body. And similarly to the vocal alchemy, the sound bowls, there's a vibration that's being released. And that vibration, because we are energy, when vibration really comes in contact with other vibration, there comes this really juicy magic where what's called entrainment, where the vibrations tend to impact each other and create homeostasis, or this balance. And so with the crystal bowl specifically, each bowl has its own they're all tuned to a frequency. 432 hertz is the bowls that I play. And the frequency of the bowls are then also tuned to different, it's likened to the musical scale. So it's from like, if you're familiar with music, it starts with C and goes all the way to B. And sometimes if there's an eighth bowl, back to C, and it creates this whole octave of tones. And each tone sort of resonates from lower tones to the highest tones. And so it really impacts the body from the root chakra all the way to the crown, if you're familiar with the energetic systems. But it also impacts the body really through the cellular, all the way down to the cellular components, because the vibration hits us, And it's likened to the idea of like a pendulum, two pendulums swinging at different rates. When they come together eventually, they'll start to create this rhythm, this harmony, this balance. And so that's the science essentially behind the bowls and the vocal alchemy, is that they're creating the space and providing room within the body, within the breath, to really soften, to land, and to receive, down regulating the amygdala, really creating space for the nervous system to do its magic, to the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. So that rest, digest, the healing components are awakened and alive and like given room to do its own thing. And so the healing really lies within you, because that's where all the magic happens. It's not like I really like to give the healing to the individual. I facilitate the space, but what's really happening is really on a solo level. And so it's really cool. Everyone's experience is different, and every sound bath is different. There's no real, one like way to play. There's infinite ways to really curate the space. And so that's what makes it really fun and juicy.
I love that. You said juicy magic before, and I was like, "Oh, that's right. Yes." And I just want to hop in quick. Our friend Jacqueline.
Yeah,
Jacqueline has also been a guest on this podcast, and the two of you collaborated for the storyline. And she did a whole episode with us on the nervous system. And as you can imagine, as you have known through life experiences and working with me, is that like the caregivers, our nervous systems are. Right? They have been through it, and they are continuing to go through it. And so I love hearing you talk about how this is another thing that we can add to our toolkits that can support our nervous system. Because what we know is, like we're just on fight or flight. We're just like on high alert. And as caregivers, like we don't really ever get to turn that off. And so knowing that there is another tool here that can, you said, get us into that rest and digest that we so desperately need as caregivers is like, ooh, so exciting. Yeah. So exciting. Yeah. Love it. I didn't know, I've experienced some sound baths with you, but I didn't know all of those details until now. So this is, very cool.
It's great. So we actually have a clip of the sound bath that you created for the storyline, so we can take a listen to that, so our listeners can get a sense of what this sounds like. That's great. That's really cool. Just listening to a little bit of that, I haven't listened to a lot of this, but I can see how that would be like a soothing experience. Like it just sounds like you would listen to that, and it's a calming music to just listen to. And you've kind of touched on this a little bit in your previous response, but this goes deeper than just being nice to listen to, right?
Yes, absolutely. So as listeners, whether they're having their headphones on or if they're listening it through or in person, it really the vibrations do its own thing, and so I'm like, it's a powerful tool to tap into to really, if you want to really kind of just drop into a mindful state, or even just like we mentioned earlier, regulate the nervous system, or create, a space where you can just kind of just drop in, find your breath, really just take a few moments out of, the busy, active day to just really feel into what is my inner landscape feeling like. It really gives, provides the space to land.
No, that's great.
A term that you use a lot, Priscilla, is this drop in. And can you, because you're the only person I know who uses that term. And so it's but I love it. So can you just describe a little bit when you said it's an opportunity to drop in? Like, what do you mean when you say that?
When I think of dropping in, I feel like it's a place to really get a little introspective, to tune into the inner landscape and to get curious, to activate that curiosity. What is going on within me? What is alive and well, in this moment without judgment, to really, really offer grace and curiosity, honestly. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that as caregivers, we don't pause very often in general.
Yeah.
And if we do pause, it's very rarely about us. But we, have talked in lots of different ways about what are those ways that we can check in with ourselves, that we can pause, that we can focus on ourselves. And so I love that term drop in. Like, can we just drop in for a moment and without judgment? It'd be like, hey, how's it going? I have benefited, I think 3 different times now from live experiences with you. The conference was magical. And I really, I was one of the leaders of that conference. It was a full day conference. It was a high stress day for me. And I kid you not that I think the only reason that I sort of ended that day feeling like, okay, and not totally depleted was because of the 15 minutes at the beginning and the end that you did. I really think that changed the experience of the day, because I had those 15-minute bookends of checking in, of slowing down, of breathing, right? That I think I wouldn't have done otherwise. I would have just kept racing. And I think I was expecting to crash at the end of that day, and I did not. And I really attribute it to those 2 moments. And I made myself, even in that moment, stop and be like, okay, you're not the conference facilitator right now, Allison. Like, you are a recipient. Like, sit still, close your eyes and take it in. And I'm so glad that I did. And then it was so magical that I booked a session for Sean and me. And then we got to come to your studio, and just the 2 of us got to do it. And then that was so magical that we booked like a group session and invited a group. Because as I was lying there at the time when it was just Sean and me, I kept thinking, this person in my life needs this, and this person in my life needs this. So we then booked a room with you, and then invited a bunch of our friends who just, everybody needs this, but, and then we all got to be in that room together. And so I just, I've gotten to experience this firsthand. And then that day we also got to do that vocal alchemy that you spoke of, where you said, what's a word or a phrase that came up for you? And then you turned it into a song. And come on, it just, one person who was there said, I haven't smiled like this in a really long time. And that was his response at the end of it. So I wish that everybody lived in Minneapolis and could just like hop over to your studio, right, and experience that. But, you created for caregivers this 25-minute sound bath, right? That's now available on the Storyline and that Justin just showed a clip of. So is it, now that people have access to it in that way, like, is it just as effective? Is it less effective in your earbuds? And like, if, when I got to go to your studio, you had like pillows and blankets and, soft lighting. But what if it's just, I'm going to click the button and do it in my house? Like, how would that work? Do you have it on the background? Do you have it at bedtime? Like, how could people use it now that they have access on the Storyline?
And I always like to say there's no really wrong way to experience a sound bath.
Okay.
I think, of course, like, being in person, it creates a different experience. There's different components, there's more moving components. But when you're in the space of your own home, you get to curate that. You get to be the person that really facilitates the space that you get to land and drop in, which also is kind of a fun and exciting way to really activate a little bit of self-care. Like, what do you need? Do I need pillows? Do I need my bed? Do I need a chair to sit in? Do I want to go outside? Do I need the sun on my face? So you get to really create an intentional space to land and to drop in and receive. And so it's like, how do you want to receive? And so you get to invite your own essence into the practice, which I think is honestly just as powerful.
Can I pause for a second to say, again, we caregivers, we're not good at stopping to say, what do I need?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We did that as a grounding in at a recent support group. And it's just like, people are like, I don't know. I don't ever stop to ask myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so even that moment of, do I need right now? Do I want to be outside or inside? Do I need another pillow? Do I need, you know what I mean? Just even that question, I think, is a powerful shift for caregivers. Right. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
And a fun thing too is like, oftentimes in person, you'll get that like one or two folks that like, fall asleep and then contribute these beautiful snoring soundscapes to the harmonious rhythms of the bowls. And so at the comfort of your own home, you could invite that for yourself. If you do fall asleep, if you do snore, it's not necessarily like a disruption to the entire space. So it's kind of, you get to really play around with getting comfortable.
Yeah. Is it also the kind of thing where like, is it meant for relaxation, or is it like, I can have this on while I'm driving, or I can have this on while I'm like in the background while I'm working, or is it going to put me to sleep while I'm doing other things?
Like I said, there really is no wrong way to experience a sound bath. I always invite, like a restful place to land. But if you have things to do, you want to throw that in and have that be, maybe you're cooking, maybe you're cleaning, maybe you're out and about, maybe you're in the, a doctor's office, maybe, you're waiting, you can really invite these tools into any space that is convenient for you. It becomes really accessible in that capacity.
Mm-hmm. I know I'm thinking about like sitting in the hospital room and having it on, and the benefit to both the caregiver and the patient and the staff, who are experiencing that. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday, Sarah and I ended up in the ER. Everything's fine. It was just turned out to be not a huge deal. But one of the things I did as we were preparing to go is I had the file for this sound bath because I'd been editing the clip, and I put it on made sure it was on my phone. So if I ended up not ended up using it, but it's like, you don't know what's going to happen in the ER.
Yeah.
Like she could be off doing something and I could be waiting alone in a room for a while and feeling that anxiety. And I just wanted that as a tool to be available if I needed to like really calm down and kind of have a little bit of rest during that experience. So I think it's great that with the Storyline, this is something that is available as a tool for people in situations like that as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's a powerful story, Justin. I'm glad that you had that at your fingertips. And because I think sometimes even if we don't use it, just knowing that it's there.
True. Yeah.
Helps to be like, okay, I'm good to, like, if this happens, or if I feel this, or if they feel this, like, I'm ready, I love it.
Yeah. Good. So we've been talking about sound baths, but what about music just in general? You said you're first and foremost like a musician is kind of how you see yourself. So listening to music, does any kind of music also have some benefits like you've mentioned with the frequencies? I mean, should we just all be listening to music all the time? And is there certain genres or types of music that have more like of these benefits than others?
That's a really good question. And when I think about music, I think it's like one of our first, or just sound in general. I
Hmm.
liken sound and music to kind of correlate them often. It's one of our first like access points in this world.
Mm.
Hmm.
When we think about when we're in the womb, the
Mm.
mother's voice, the people around you voices is our first sort of line of connection
Hmm.
to the world. And every culture has its own set of music or tones
Hmm.
or practices that invite spaces to calm, whether it be, whatever aspect that looks like. And so, to be honest, I think whatever music resonates with you really can create the space and
Hmm.
room for whatever type of healing or connection or ways in which you want to resource it to really, transpose into your life. Um, for me, I really find that, like, there's just just a little bit of background about myself too. I'm Nigerian American. I was born here in Minnesota, and my parents migrated here in 1982. My grandma came in the 1994, and that's been a really deep component of my upbringing and informs just who I am.
Hmm.
And through that access point, music, traditional undertones of like Yoruba and Igbo music and percussions have been played throughout my household. My grandmother is like the she passed recently, like the most beautiful, joyous being I've ever met. And she would always sing. She would always sing. Like
Mm.
she would sing songs from like, this is the way you brush your teeth,
Yeah.
to like just little things that really, landed, within me. And I still remembered I could think of those little songs and those little like drop ins that really, you
Mm.
know, created not only just a memory, but like, it softened my heart, and moving, past just even like my family dynamic to even being in community. I grew up in church. So like the choir
Hmm.
and in the spaces like that, that was always, gospel, that the words were meant and to create a space to, really connect. When I think about when I started, learning more about mindfulness and meditation, chanting, the
Hmm.
power of Om, which is this universal tonage that creates, just, is it's something that's alive and well within all of us. It's like this universal life force through sound. And so you start to really, as I start to develop and grow, and I just listen to the radio. There's songs that like
Hmm.
you hear nostalgic and it brings you
You're
back,
right.
and it creates,
Yeah.
movement in the body. It makes you want to groove, makes you want to move, and those are points that bring joy. Those are
Hmm.
points that, really hit the nervous system, that make you,
Mm.
like, ah, there's
Mm.
also sounds that, you don't resonate with too.
Hmm.
And like, you can, then don't listen to that. You do tend to navigate towards the sounds and the tonages that really resonate with you. And so when you land into those spaces, they do create some sort of shift within the body.
Mm.
Hmm.
What about the people we care for? I think we're here for the caregivers, right? And I'm so glad about all the ways it can soothe us and connect to us and all of that. And how do you see us as caregivers using music or sound baths or any of these components to support and care for the people we're caring for?
I think there's two things that are coming to mind. I think as the caregiver receiving the soundscapes and then coming and allow, and maybe landing in a space where you are able to soften a little or maybe even ground a little bit, that energy, that shift within you
Mm.
translates to how you show up in your community. And so that I feel like is one of the first access points to really create change for, the care for the person I forget the exact
Receiving care.
terminology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Receiving care. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the sounds itself work just the same, to do
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
magic on that. So even just providing any sort of space or room,
Yeah.
to land softly is beneficial to anyone who
Hmm.
receives. And
Yeah.
I actually have two resources by me that it's funny. These books that I've used a lot to inform a lot of my sound healing experiences. One is called Sound Medicine, and it's how to use ancient science of sound to heal the mind and body.
Mm.
And then the other one is The Healing Power of Sound, Recovering from Life-Threatening Illnesses Using Sound, Voice, and Music. And these two books have really been a powerful tool in informing how I show up in my practice, because it really provides a lot of the science and also resources to really cultivate the space that is really nourishing for the nervous system. And so I say those tools because they really provide the heady part of it, the science behind a lot of what is happening in these experiences that I feel like hold weight in understanding really how to really utilize the sound bath to your advantage.
Yeah. Because I can see some people hearing one of the second title and being like, okay, is she telling me that if I turn on music, my person's cancer is going to go away? Right. And I see you shaking your head, and that's not what's happening. Right.
No.
And I think Justin and I were just talking before we hopped on this morning about this podcast called Telepathy Tapes. I don't know if you've heard it. It's blowing people's minds. Anyway, the point is that I think that we have just scratched the surface. We see and access so little of what's available to us. And so I think that the same thing is happening here with the sound, right? That we're just well, that sounds nice, but we don't realize it's more than sounds nice, right? And so what you're saying is these books provide some of the science of what's actually happening in our bodies and our systems and our souls when those vibrations happen. Right? Yeah. Am I saying that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll put links to those books in the show notes too. So if people want to check them out, they can.
Perfect.
You have done us this incredible honor, Priscilla, of writing a song for caregivers. I remember the moment where you were like, I could write us a song. I was like, and it's just, beyond any of the expectations I could have ever had for it. That the negative space, our theme is I'm part of the story. And you're like, that can be the theme. That can be what the song is about. And so the song is now available in the storyline as well. We have a video of you, and so people can see, your just beautifulness singing. And then there's also an audio version. But we're going to play just a little clip of it. And then we'll talk about it.
Hey, smile on my face while on the preface of breaking down. Who knew I would make it look so easy to drown? A ticking time bomb that goes unseen, where the object and the motive leave no room for me. Every single day, every single word, I'm reminded of our journey unheard. I turn the pages, hoping that they'll see I'm part of the story. I'm part of the story.
Oof. So good. It's so good. Oh, okay. I want to reread those lyrics just so they can really, it's really sink in. Smile on my face while on the preface of breaking down. Who knew I could make it look so easy to drown? A ticking time bomb that goes unseen, where the object and the motive leave no room for me. Every single day, every single word, I'm reminded that my journey's unheard. I turn the pages, hoping that they'll see I'm part of the story. Oh, plus, can we just take a minute to note the brilliance of, because it's called the storyline, and I'm part of the story, all of the book references you used in there. So many cool book references. Plus, Priscilla, you get us, right? That's what I really wanted, was caregivers to hear this and be like, oh, she gets us, right? So talk to us about, what was it like writing a song for this group of humans who so often goes unseen, but now has a theme song, thanks to you. What was that process like for you?
The process was really intimate, because honestly, during that time of writing the song, I was actually going through my own internal struggles with navigating some things. And it was honestly my solace. It was really my own healing, that you also challenged me to really get real.
Yeah.
And because that's what you do, you don't bypass the real experiences. You really are authentic and genuine and hold space for the realness. And that idea, smile on my face while on the preface of breaking down, I could make it look so easy to drown. You actually wrote a poem. And you were likening a lot of like, hey, you're talking about this idea of like, I'm over here drowning. Like, can you see me? And everyone's just like, oh, she's got it. You're good. You're fine. And you're like, woo, woo, bubbles. You're like, wait, and so they're like, look at that backstroke. Wow. And so it was really, I resonated with that, especially during that time, the way that I show up is, for community. That's like, and that's, I love it. 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 And that requires, that you pour it back into yourself, and that was what this year has really taught me that. And so when I was writing this song, after, we have talked and like kind of shared some feedback back and forth, it really, the words just came through, automatically, because it was just real, and, the first, if you listen to the whole song, it starts off with like, I'm supposed to be the strong one, that rises up when the storm comes. And it's like that title of being strong, it oftentimes leaves you with lack of support, because people are like, oh, they're fine, they're good. And it's like, my strength doesn't mean that I still don't need community. My strength doesn't mean that I'm exempt from all of life's experience, because I'm still human, And so I feel like the song is just really a war, a battle cry to be like, I'm human, I'm real, I'm not exempt, and so I need space for that to be seen, to be heard, to be held, to be honored. I also need to do that for myself. And so that was really what was sort of the calling points into curating this song.
I feel like I just went to church. Well, and actually, when you and I had a lot of conversations, because the first draft sort of started off a little bit like, oh, this is hard. And then you sort of got bright-sidey, right? Which we talk a lot about here, and which is what the world wants us to do. And
exactly.
And, because I love you and all of that, at first I was like, okay, maybe I should just say, okay, great, thank you. And then I was like, no, because this is not going to serve caregivers to have a song that's bright-sidey in this way.
Right.
So I pushed myself to come back, give you some feedback, and you came back with like, okay. And now it's like, yes. And I'm so glad that I did, because I feel like we would have done a disservice if we had left it in that sort of like, this is really hard, but actually it's fine. Right. Like,
yes,
that's what the world is doing.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And that was the greatest gift, Allison, like to get real. I think, like you said, it's so easy to be like, love and light and rainbows and butterflies. Oh, I see the storm over there, but there's a rainbow in the front, and it's like, but I'm in it. Yes. And so where's the tools to navigate being in the heavy? Yes. And so it was really cool and honestly, like life-changing for myself, because it also provided me the resource to do the same for my,
Yeah. Oh,
Priscilla, I'm curious. Do you have a connection to caregiving prior to helping out with this writing, or?
I've navigated some caregiving. I live with my grandmother, and she passed about a year and a half ago. I said recently, but it just, time is of the, it's really hard to, quantify that time. And while she was with us she was only back for a little bit, and just being able to provide space and just, from, I remember the last, I gave her last bath. And I remember her being like, oh, the roles have changed, and just like, it was really powerful to be, and what a gift and honor to, to share that with her. And just as I show up in general, I do host a lot of different types of, whether it be, I mentioned that I do sound healing and curate these small and large group experiences, but I also do body work and Reiki and Thai body work specifically. And I do work with a lot of just different practitioners and caregivers in general. So I really have been supporting caregivers for a while. I do stuff with Hennepin Healthcare through HCMC and Whittier Clinic, and I do actually provide sound bath experiences for their staff and communities. So that's another kind of access point into the caregiving community. But in general, there's a lot of caregivers out there. And so when you, honestly, when I went to the caregivers conference, I wouldn't have necessarily classified myself as a caregiver. And after experiencing that space and really hearing the stories and what was held, I was like, oh, I have shown up in a caregiving capacity, and it really changed the dynamic of how I even see myself and my community. Cause I'm like, oh my goodness, sister, you're a caregiver, brother, you're a caregiver, uncle, auntie, mom. I'm like, whoa, they're everywhere, you know? And so it was really, it just opened my eyes a lot to an experience and story and journey that isn't really highlighted as often as you think, you know what I mean? And so
in the negative space.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's right there, but nobody's paying attention to it, right? But when you see it, you're like, oh, it's everywhere. Yeah.
Good. So going back to the song a minute here. So you talked previously about the power that the sound and music can have, like, internally on us, on our moods, on like our bodies and all of that. But in addition to that, what is your hope for what this song will do for caregivers, just to have their reality seen and sung about in a song for them?
It's my hopes that the song will provide a space for caregivers to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel held, and then to maybe plant a seed, of like, how can I honor my experiences? How can I hold myself? How can I care for myself? Just planting these little seeds of intention that can be nourished and blossomed in infinite ways. But, once you just are introduced to this idea, there's like, like the idea of going to another book, but emergent strategy. And it's this idea, of like, and I'll, tap into Octavia Butler, because that's one of my favorite authors. She wrote this book called Parable of Sowers. And in the book, she talks about this idea of that which you touch, you change, and that which you change changes you. And so it's kind of been used in this idea of emergent strategy that, like, by coming into contact with something, the song, it's going to create a change within the inner landscape, right? And whatever change is happening when you move through the world, that is going to create change outwardly. And so it's kind of this idea of like, I don't know what it'll look like, but whatever it's going to look like for the individual who's now being transformed by hearing this lyrics will now create, in subtle ways and shifts, you know what I mean, their own sort of emergence of what the alchemy of the song within them will land and then emerge too. And so that's kind of my hopes and visions for this song, is that it can provide a space for the caregiver to really expand in new ways.
Oh, I love it. Because I think about, that poem that you referenced that I wrote. Like, it's one thing when someone reads a poem and then they feel like, I think that same change can happen. But what I love about the song is, like, they could just have it in their earbuds all day long, right? You don't walk around your house reading a poem over and over again. But
well, you don't.
Song, well, nice. Some people do. It's true. Good
Maybe.
point.
I don't know.
But with the song, I mean, they could, like, and when you said battle cry, like, that was really my hope, is that this could be their battle cry, is that they could be like doing the dishes or the whatever, and then like in their ears, like, I'm part of the story. I'm part of the story. You know what I mean? They're like, and it's such a, once you hear the whole song, I mean, it's an earworm in the best possible way, right? Like, it sticks with you, and is one of those songs that, like, you're going to find yourself singing it later in the day, which is the beauty, right? And so I love that it's in song form, because it's one thing, like I said, to read something or to have someone say it, or even to have it on your mug, but to have it in your ears all day, and then be sort of humming it, or like, even like when I saw your name on my calendar this morning, my brain went to the song and started singing the song, And so I love that it's like this other way of accessing for them, of like being reminded they're part of the story, they're part of the story, they're part of the story, right? In another form. that didn't exist before. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Priscilla, is there anything else about the power of sound and music that we haven't talked about that you would like to touch on?
I always like to, when I think about sound and music and, curating that, the sort of juicy magic behind it, I always like people just to like consider their own journey with sound and music. Like consider, your favorite songs, what is your relationship to music and how has it impacted you? And through that, just sort of point of introspection, see what arises and comes from your own experience. Because you get to really inform how music and sound lands for you too. And so, I just always like to say agency, because we all have agency. We all have this innate gift. It's our birthright to choose, and so when we when we activate that magic, I always say magic, but it's like when we activate these, these spaces with intention and with curiosity, we have an inner wisdom that lies within, a depth of knowledge that can only be experienced through our own self-awareness and experience. And so I invite people to find out for themselves. I can provide my answers from my experience, but really we're all the key holders. And so get curious. What is your first line of connection? What's the first song that hit, that you heard, that was like, ooh, like what's like, walk around your environment. What do you hear? What's happening around you? What are you listening to? What voices and sounds are around you already? What thoughts are kind of permeating your atmosphere? Those are the sounds and the, ways in which we already have lines of connection to. So get curious. And I think that will really inform how people will understand the power of how sound already is impacting their life already.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about, so I'm a birder. And so I go out and look and listen to birds.
Oh, you're a birder.
Birder. Yeah. And so I'm just kind of thinking, being out in the morning, and especially now it's spring, and it's just, the forest is full of song from the birds. And it is an exercise to like be actively paying attention to that and to kind of tune into that. And it's such a beautiful thing that is just around us. And so, paying attention to the sound that is around us all the time. Yeah, that's really great. The other thing that I was thinking about as you've been talking is listening to music like intentionally, or like you said, or actively. I think so often, like, we have music on in the background, or we're driving in the car, so we're going to put music on, and that's fine. That's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But that there could be more in thinking about, as you said, like curating music, sort of. So like realizing this song makes me feel this way, or I'm feeling this way. What music do I know that could help me or show up for me right now? I think could be a helpful thing.
And that brings sort of in that like sort of somatic drop in, where you get to kind of be like, okay, what sensations am I feeling in the body? Where are they landing? Like, how is my breath moving through me? Like, what is my body? What is the disposition of my body? How is it changing? You can really get super deep with each experience, not only with the sound bath, not only with the song, but with, like you said, like birds, as you're landing in nature, like you can really just take a moment, drop in, and get, sort of, I say get curious, because that's like, feels to me really, aligns with, that process. Cause it's like, it invites like, get, lose the judgment, and also, but still, and navigate the space with just, like what's happening, and so I think that that's a process that can be, adopted with any, sound or music experience.
And Justin, you probably know this, but I always see the fact about something about listening to birds' song makes our nervous system feel safe. Something about how like birds didn't used to sing unless they were safe. And so like there's something about listening to birds that triggers something in our nervous system that says you are safe.
Right. Like if there's a predator, they won't be singing.
Right.
They'll be hunkered down.
So because they're singing, it's showing you're safe, and somehow our bodies like understand that.
Remember that.
And so it helps us feel safe when we hear birds and pay attention.
I didn't know
I'm
that.
not misquoting now, but yeah.
Cool.
Priscilla, at the end of all of our episodes, we talk to supporters. So that could be people who are, helping other caregivers in their life professionally or personally, just sort of what's the flip side, right? And so what would you say, are there ways that supporters can help caregivers access or benefit from the power of music?
I think as supporters, sharing resources. We all have access to things that make us feel good, and we all need things that feel good. So I think sharing resources is a powerful way to support caregivers. If there's a song that you hear that's like, ooh, this really lands well in my body, and someone might benefit from them, go ahead and share it with them. If there's an affirmation or there's a poem, if there's things that really come to you that are landing and creating softness within your own being, share that and provide that tool for the people around you as well.
Well, Priscilla, thank you so much for being here today with us. This has been a great conversation. Besides the song and sound bath on the storyline that we've talked about here, are there other ways that folks can access your resources?
Yes, I do have some music available on Apple and Spotify and kind of all of the main sort of like streaming platforms under Priscilla Momah. And if you're in the Twin Cities area, I do offer a lot of what I call the soulful embodiment experiences throughout the year. And that really creates spaces for people to land and drop in and get intentional in this curated space of, healing soundscapes and movement and breath work and oftentimes body work in addition to that. I'm located and based in the Twin Cities once again. And so Cocoa Womb Wellness is the name of my business where I really land all my offerings in.
Great.
Yeah. And I wanted to say on the storyline, so there's aspects of the storyline that are free and accessible to everybody forever. And that includes your song and the video of your song, the sound bath. And then also we layered your sound bath, with a yoga nidra guided meditation that Jacqueline did. And so that people can listen to that either with just her voice or with her voice and the sound bath together, which is so juicy, like your word. And so I will say that the sound bath and the sound bath with the meditation are part of the subscription piece. The storyline, we tried to make it really accessible. It's $5.99 a month. However, we at the Negative Space are dedicated to making sure that all of our resources are free or available at no cost. And so if the $5.99 a month is not accessible to you, there's a button you can click and it just sends it to us. And then we give you 3 months for free. So don't let cost be an issue. Click on through and find so that you can listen to the sound bath and then also get into all the other good stuff. But check out the song and the sound bath on the storyline, which you can find through the Negative Space website. So
great.
Yeah. Priscilla, this has just been a gift. It's making me inspired to just be more intentional with music and sound in my life. And I just am going to be thinking a lot about what you said about even the vibrations like bouncing off each other and bouncing off the walls. And, it makes me also think about that term co-regulation with our nervous system. And, and so like you said, if I take time to do that, like, how is that going to impact Sean? And, all of this is just given me a lot to think about. So thank you for being here, for creating the sound bath, for creating our what did we call it? Our battle cry.
Yeah.
Our battle cry song. Oh, it's a gift to know you. So thank you for all the ways you support this community.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to hosts@insickness.care. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver. Thanks for listening and take care.